business people.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Primetime Debate. My name is Ayush Alavadi. Now, the tragedy at Kamla Mills has put the spotlight once again on the dismal state of planning in Mumbai. This year has seen its share of horrific disasters, be it the stampede at Elphinstone Road Station, to multiple fires across the city, and of course the constant floods during the monsoons. These incidents have made us realize that the city is perhaps developing at a faster rate than what civic authorities are prepared to handle. To discuss this very poor state of planning in Maximum City, I'm joined by K.V. Hivrale, the Deputy Chief Fire Officer of Mumbai, noted architect, Hafiz contractor, and urban expert and environmentalist Rishi Agarwal with me in the studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the show. Mr. Hivrale, I'd like to start by asking you about, well, the tragic incident that took place last night. Could something like this have been averted, perhaps? And also, does this really point to, well, gross negligence when it comes to such establishments actually running shop?
That building was a trade house building. It has been situated in the Kamla Mill compound, namely trade house. It was basement, ground and plus 2-floor building. And the fire was in the terrace rooftop restaurant, and there were 2 restaurants. One is been completely enclosed and one is having partly open to sky. And the visitors, those who are been there in the A1 above restaurant, they have been stranded because of the smoke lock, and they are not able to come to the escape route, that is the staircase or the lift. And they have taken the shelter in, I think so, in the bathroom, and they all 13s were been suffocated due to dense smoke.
Absolutely, sir. You know, it's a very, very tragic situation when you narrated those events as well. But Rishi, you know, when it comes to such a situation, you were at the site earlier today. You know, obviously there were bamboos that were put up at this rooftop for the longest time, covering it. You know, there have been issues in Mumbai as well when it comes to rooftop establishments serving beverages, alcoholic beverages as well. So they've got this cover that they've got on top. Does this really point to a sorry state of affairs and pathetic, really shoddy urban planning? And perhaps when it comes to dishing out permissions, is that where we're going wrong?
Absolutely, Ayush. I mean, I was at the site and you could make out that the whole place had a scaffolding of bamboos with tarpaulin on top. You don't need to be a fire expert or a chemistry expert to know that tarpaulin would really instantaneously go up on flames. The bigger issue is, I mean, if you're following the news reports, the owners of the premises got enough number of notices in the past 3 months. 4 to 5 instances of getting notices. So you can imagine the brazen attitude of the people who are operating these kind of joints. Yeah. And it points to a far bigger nexus. I mean, these people have complete political protection, and the kind of regulatory framework in which the municipal corporation is working is absolutely shameless, with no regard for life. This is not the only instance. If you were to open an investigation, you will find thousands of such violations all across the city.
Right, you know, Mr. Contractor, you know, I'd like for you to weigh in on this part of the argument. Would you say that, well, shoddy planning and the things that Mr. Agarwal was just enlisting are perhaps the key reasons for such disasters?
Yes, I won't say shoddy planning, but I would say that, you know, our laws are completely lopsided. We do not know for whom we are making the laws. I'm really very sorry that, you know, all these young kids had, you know, went through, you know, this kind of a tragedy. But if you look at it, we have a population of 1.3 billion people, out of which 65% of the people are below 35. Where do all these kids go to? We have 150 kilometers of a coastline. Do we have a single restaurant or a pub on the coast? If we had these kind of laws that, you know, our coastline is opened up, we exploit our coast, we won't push our kids to these kind of shoddy places which people are making undue advantage of. So I would say that yes, our laws are not in sync with for whom they are making these laws. We are keeping on to these foolish laws and holding on to them. We should make laws by which this kind of tragedy do not take place. And I sincerely feel that we should think how all over the world, what is happening. Look at it. We talk about FSI. We are curbing our FSI. We are forcing people to do illegal things. The same thing is with, you go to this restaurant or whatever. I have not gone. But there must be a hell of a lot illegal stuff. Hell of a lot. And so many other restaurants also.
But I don't think.
But why are we doing
that
this?
Got anything to do with
it's interesting. Rishi,
150 kilometers of coastline and the point you're trying to make.
So Mr. Contractor is trying to make a point, essentially saying that there is a shortage of space and facilities.
But that has got nothing to do with observing the laws. I mean, that has got nothing to do with having.
Okay.
No, but I think, Mr. Contractor, you're driving your pet agenda. I think.
One second. No.
Okay.
No. There is no agenda. There is no agenda.
No, of course. Mr. Contractor, please complete your point.
Yeah. Yes. What I'm trying to say, why are these places, illegal places, which without, proper fire escapes, smaller fire escapes, because we are curbing on FSI. Suppose, if we had this whole coastline opened up, do you mean to say that am I so foolish to go on a terrace top in middle of buildings and spend my evening over there? I would be out of my mind. If this coastline is opened up, you have a beautiful place to go to. Not a single, we can talk about not a single restaurant which is on the coast.
Okay.
Mumbai is an island, but not a single restaurant. Just think about it. What are we doing? Is it right? Is it right?
Right, Mr.
And where do all these kids go to?
No, Mr. Contractor.
You're forcing them to go.
Fair point, Mr. Contractor. And that's what I want to bring Mr. Hivrale in as well, because, while you talk about...
It's a very genuine point.
Absolutely.
It's a very genuine point.
Point taken.
Yeah.
The point being, Mr. Contractor...
We have to change our foolish laws.
No, absolutely, Mr. Contractor. And also the fact being that, well, at the end of the day, even if we were to open up the coastline, these requisite permissions would be needed. And that's what I want to ask Mr. Hivrale. Mr. Hivrale, when it comes to this particular disaster, Mr. Hivrale...
Definitely.
Mr. Hivrale, when it comes to these commercial and residential complexes needing NOCs and permissions from the fire department, if you could give us some sort of perspective in terms of...
Can I interject into that? Can I interject into this?
Okay, Mr. Contractor, you can make your point.
Okay. When we have these kind of large urban areas, nothing in relation with this. Let me be very frank.
Okay.
And when we have large densities, these areas should be asked to have their own fire department, so that we do not rely on the Bombay Fire Brigade and the amount of time that they take, and when there is a celebration or something going on, that the fire department of that area is told, so that we avoid these kind of incidences.
Fair enough. So now, Mr. Contractor, since the status quo is that we have a fire department which perhaps is the only agency or authority responding to this, and they've been doing a fantastic job over the years, but of course the job gets tougher considering the urban planning issue. Mr. Hivrale, when it comes to what happened last night, what kind of requisite permission? We know Kamla Mills is a compound which in the day is of course a commercial complex with restaurants as well. In the night it becomes a nightlife hub as well. There's a lot of young people, like Mr. Contractor was saying. What kind of permissions perhaps are supposed to be in place and were not in place, or the kinds of warnings that they didn't pay heed to in this particular case, Mr. Hivrale?
In this particular case, I think we have given the fire safety measures for one above club or a restaurant, and they have to comply it. And what happened? To have the quick disposal of these fire safety measures, we are recommending, and that has to be complied. That has to be complied by the user, owner, and that owner, the Act, Maharashtra Fire Prevention Life Safety Measure Act 2006 itself says that it is the responsibility of the owner to keep the place fire safe. And our MC sir has also given last time some directives, and accordingly we have made the appeal to the commercial premises that they should display the board, symbolic board, that this place is fire compliance, fire safety compliance place, and accordingly they should comply. And the secondary authority, they should verify. If they are not complying, then accordingly action should it is to be initiated against them.
Okay.
When they are going to renew their license, it has to be rejected.
Right.
What we expect from us. And secondary, what we are now in the process of, our officers we are randomly doing as a fire act sale, but now commissioner has instructed us, given the directives and timeline bound, that you make a fire prevention cell that will dedicatedly work to make strong fire preventive measures every premises, establishment, commercial, irrespective of residential also.
But you know, Mr. Hivrale, just to follow up, just to understand how difficult it is.
In process.
No, Mr. Hivrale, I just want to understand how difficult it is on the ground, considering the infrastructure situation in Bombay, considering how narrow the access roads are, considering how traffic is getting worse day by day, considering how these complexes, like Mr. Contractor was saying, are in, you know, densely populated and you know, in concrete jungles, so to speak. Does that make your job a lot tougher, Mr. Hivrale?
Yeah. And secondly, I want to add, in every establishment or the commercial premises, there has to submit the B form that the fire premises is been stipulated fire safety measures has been complied, and that B form they twice in a year they have to submit to the local authority, and if they fail to do so, then we will initiate the prosecution against them. And for the dedicated cell, we are in the process. It will shortly it will be executed.
Sure. So, you know, I want to take that point to Rishi. Rishi, it's a shocking situation. If they're talking about violation of these norms, and obviously a fire safety cell coming into being very soon, in an area like Lower Parel, let's consider Lower Parel, where we are right now.
Right.
The number of buildings, the narrow roads I was talking about.
Yeah.
It's shocking. There's at any point in the day or at night, there are thousands of people in these mill compounds. Right. And these are mill compounds at the end of the day that have been modernized.
Yeah. So you have to look at a 20-year time frame, Ayush. I mean, since 1996, that is when the Charles Correa Committee was formed to look into a holistic development of the millland area.
Yeah.
And I think almost everything that they said has been undone and overruled. A big clutch of architects, lawyers, politicians, municipal officials have completely overruled and shaped the Milland district, which was 600 acres available and could have become a beautiful and well-planned complex in the middle of the city, has turned into an urban planning nightmare. I mean, Mr. Contractor was talking about young people going towards the coast, etc. Around the world, commercial hubs are also places of partying. So Manhattan or a Singapore or a Hong Kong or a London, people don't go out of the commercial hub somewhere far away and then do the partying. They do the partying there
in the city center. Yeah.
And for me, it is shocking. I mean, also I would like to remind you that earlier in this month, there was a fire at Sakinaka. 12 workers died in the Farsan shop. A few years back, we had a big incident at Kurla, opposite Don Bosco College. I think 10, 12 students died in the Kinara accident which you're talking.
Right.
So I'm surprised that Mr. Hivrale is now talking of a fire prevention. We've had enough instances in the past few years, and it is no secret that there is no shortage of establishments which are completely flouting fire norms. Look at one above. It has been served 4 notices in the past 3 to 4 months. What stops the municipal corporation from outright entering the premises and stopping them from doing business?
Yeah.
Clearly there is something hanky-panky in the whole business.
No, absolutely. And, you know, Mr. Hivrale, and that's a point that Rishi was raising earlier as well. But that's a fair point. Why did it take so long, and after so many tragedies, sir, for us to be considering a fire safety prevention cell? Shouldn't that have been the need of the hour? Even Mr. Contractor said that, well, perhaps we need separate entities running this in these neighborhoods as well.
No, I agree with you that there are many incidents has been happened, but what we are when we are suggesting, it has to be strictly followed by. And earlier we don't have any force act. Now we are having. So on that we are now processing. Earlier we are only the recommending authority and suggesting. Now we have the Act 2006. So accordingly, then we will make it strengthen our fire prevention cell.
Okay. Okay.
That is the required.
Mr. Contractor, I want to understand something from you from an architectural standpoint. A lot of these complexes, especially in a city which is, there's a lot of paucity of space like Mumbai, are on mill lands, which were originally mill lands. A lot of them are being modernized, urbanized, industrialized. What we're seeing is that, well, while some of them come up with some sort of modern facilities, isn't it imperative to have comprehensive fire safety procedures and facilities in these mill lands, which are now becoming the Kamla mills and the Todi mills and the Raghuvanshi mills of Mumbai?
No, definitely. As far as fire safety norms are concerned, yes, you have to abide by it. A lot of them are getting flouted, so I'm not in favor of it. We should have monitors who above the fire brigade people also. There should be monitors who monitor whether the norms approvals given are in the right manner, so that there is somebody overlooking them also. The same way for municipality also, that somebody has to be there overlooking on top of them. And we have to have comprehensive plans for the city. What the other gentleman was talking about, the Korea plan. Okay, it never came about. I had given a plan for greening of the whole Mumbai city with something like 300 acres of green spaces at the coast. None of these plans, just get, because somebody or the other criticizes it. If Charles Korea plan would have come about, it would have been a different way and a much better way. We need large, bigger ideas for this city to come up and bloom into a much, much better place. But according to me, none of these things get done. And I feel that the root cause of all of this is that we need places where kids can go. What the other gentleman was talking about, yes, we need large urban areas in the center of the city, yes, where we can party, but then they should be designed in that manner. Over here, they are not designed, and then subsequently we need it, so we just do retrofitting. That should not be the way.
Right, and Rishi, but it's not just what Mr. Contractor was saying. One more point I want to make is also the amount of real estate projects coming out here in this area, in Lower Parel especially. You see perhaps the biggest towers in the world, complexes, and they're all around, dotting, perhaps surrounding Kamla mills. That's only going to add to the problem when it comes to congestion, when it comes to all sorts of things.
Absolutely, Ayush. I mean, when you mentioned modernity, I was at Kamla Mill just earlier in this month in a restaurant just close to the one which got burned. I was meeting a friend and I was remarking to him that we've just made another Buleshwar Kalba Devi out of the Kamla Mill compound. So in the facade of modernity, there's just glasscapes and modern cars. You have BMWs and Bentleys and people fashionably dressed, and you would imagine that you're in a Manhattan. But frankly speaking, a Manhattan stands on a very strong steel frame. Whereas our places like the Mill District are almost like the bamboo framework which collapsed during this fire. So we are almost standing on a bamboo framework. We just put some cosmetics. We feel that we are modern. But beyond that, it's, I shouldn't use the word, but yes, it's our sanskars which seem to allow everything hanky-panky to go on as life. And I really don't think we value life. I mean, Elphinstone tragedy happened just 3-4 months earlier. It's the makings are the same. Whether it's at the railway station or at Kamla Mill, the underground is the same.
Right, I really hope the next time we meet Rishi, we're not talking about a disaster and perhaps doing a lot more forward planning. Mr. Hivrale, Mr. Contractor, thanks so much for joining us on Bloomberg Quint. We really hope that, better planning and conversations like this could avert such a tragic situation in the future. For all of you tuned in, thanks so much for watching. Well, the value of Bitcoin has jumped over 1,700% this year, prompting experts and countries to side with or go against cryptocurrencies. Amidst this wild, ongoing, volatile rally in cryptocurrencies around the world in general, and Bitcoin in particular, the Union Government of India has warned the public against investing in virtual currencies. The government has likened investments in virtual currencies to Ponzi schemes. In a statement, the Finance Ministry has said, and I quote, "There is a real and heightened risk of investment bubble of the type seen in Ponzi schemes, which can result in sudden and prolonged crash, exposing investors, especially retail consumers, losing their hard-earned money." The statement also says that the price of such virtual currencies is a mere speculation leading to volatility. This comes after the RBI's recent clarification on the issue. Now, recently, the Reserve Bank of India said that it has not given any license to any entity to operate as exchanges to trade in cryptocurrencies. Now, the RBI stance is not an exception. In fact, many central banks have also opined that trading in bitcoins is a lot of risk. So what next for virtual currencies in India? Will the RBI and the government look at regulating the trade of bitcoins? Is it really a bubble, or will central banks change their stance in the future? To discuss that and more, we're joined by R. Gandhi, former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. So we really appreciate you joining us on Bloomberg Quint. I want to start by asking you what you make of the government's warning, this particular warning or the set of warnings coming in. Is the way forward regulation, sir?
Yeah, thanks for the question. These virtual currencies are being seen by different people in different jurisdictions differently. Somebody says it's a currency, somebody says it is a security, somebody else considers it as a commodity, and there has been arguments from some other group that it must be treated as an asset by its own right. So there has been no consensus about which is the right one. So clearly, the virtual currency per se, dealing in buying or selling, it is not an illegal activity. But there are occasions, there are evidences, anecdotal evidences that this virtual currency has been used for illegal activity. That doesn't make the virtual currency per se an illegal activity. That's why banning or totally stopping it is not the right method. That's what Indian jurisdiction, Indian government, Reserve Bank, SEBI, and other regulators have so far are of the opinion that it is not an illegal activity, but definitely it is a very risky activity. So when a risky activity is there, then it is the first duty, it is a duty of the government and the regulators to caution the public that you be careful while dealing with such arrangements. So that's what Reserve Bank and the government has so far been maintaining. Whether it should be recognized and properly regulated, and those things are yet to be decided. I believe that all of us know that there is a committee Government of India has formed, wherein all the regulators and ministries, various ministries are sitting together with the experts to decide how to go forward in dealing with the virtual currency.
Right, Mr. Gandhi, you mentioned illicit activities and transactions, and that being a key concern for regulators like the Reserve Bank of India. But would you say that that is a little exaggerated, or pointing to the evidence of 2017, where we've seen some of the biggest cyber attacks? We've seen ransomware viruses attacking businesses and individuals around the world. And, well, all of these hackers seem to be demanding payment in Bitcoin. So there's a lot of activity with Bitcoin on the dark web as well. Is that one of the key areas of concern when you talk about illicit activities and transactions?
Yeah, when these virtual currencies are being utilized for various purposes, there are one group who are investing in purely from speculative perspective, that is to make money on the value differences that may happen during the course of the period. So that is one may not be able to have a negative opinion about such position. But the same set of units, the virtual currencies, are being utilized for illegal activities. As you just mentioned, there has been evidences that this ransom group are demanding ransom in terms of bitcoins or other virtual currencies. And we also know that certain other illegal activities like drug trafficking or anything. So that is also being carried out in terms or settled through bitcoins. So that, but whether what is the size of such activities, nobody knows. It is anybody's guess. There is no clear data whether it has risen to such an extent that it has to be prohibited. That evidence has not yet come on the scene. So that is why it has to be closely monitored. People will have to be watchful. Government and the regulators should also be continuously be monitoring it. That's what is the position currently.
Right, Mr. Gandhi, I'd love to get your views on this as well, which is essentially, we've been talking about one technology that has disrupted 2017, and that happens to be the underlying technology for Bitcoin, which is blockchain. It's a fascinating technology, but what I want to understand from you is when a regulator is viewing something like this, and if they're considering regulation, or if governments are looking at this, isn't it important to make that distinction between blockchain as a technology? Because exchanges, banks, everyone seems to be using that or thinking of using that in the future, and Bitcoin or virtual currencies that operate using that technology as a use case.
See, technology cannot be regulated and should not be regulated because a technology is a tool which can be utilized by any type of industry, not just only the financial industry. It can be used by anybody. So that's why one should not be worried about or even thinking about regulating the blockchain technology per se. Regulation should be technology neutral. That it should not come into that area at all. So that's a disruptive technology. It will be useful for very many purposes. So there is no question of regulating that blockchain technology per se. What we need to be looking at is that usage of by using whether it is a blockchain technology or some other technology, if something called virtual currency, that is what we should be worried about, not about the underlying technology.
And I also want to get your views on initial coin offerings. Now, we've seen China stands on it. In fact, China has completely come up with a blanket ban on ICOs and, of course, on exchanges as well. But in India as well, we're seeing a lot of startups looking at ICOs as a way of fundraising, so to speak, and it's getting popular around the world. Do you think, sir, that initial coin offerings, the way they're operating, should be sort of legitimized, or is that also sort of a crypto sham or a scam, so to speak?
See, initial coin offering, because the term has been borrowed from the initial public offering. So it is something like similar characteristics are seen. That's why the debate has started whether it should be a regulated one. Anything which is done through a kind of exchange that between two consulting adults who wants to invest, who want to sell, who wants to buy on both the sides, and somebody is intermediating that. In that case, yes, naturally, by normal regulation should apply. But there again, there has to be a threshold. So long as it is not by crossing the threshold, it is a very, very small activity, then there is no point in regulating it unless it has created clear damages to the public system or public wealth. China has seen that, yes, it has created damages to the public, so they have banned it. In other jurisdictions like ours, we have not yet seen it as a damaging way, or its potential to damage is limited. So that is why it has been it has not yet been brought under direct regulation by under like an exchange, stock exchange like that. It has not yet come. But again, obviously, as I said, the regulators and government will be closely watching. Is it crossing that threshold, the comfortable threshold? In that case, definitely I would expect regulation to come in. Even the other day, the SEBI chairman has said that he is closely monitoring that. So yes, that is the position now. So, anything which is just because it has started, we should not get into controlling it.
Absolutely, sir. As a last question to you, I just want to understand. So, obviously these are non-fiat cryptocurrencies. When it comes to, there have been talks of regulators coming together and coming up with a fiat cryptocurrency, which is perhaps more acceptable and can take on the likes of, Bitcoin or even traditional currencies, so to speak. Sir, what are your views on something like that, where it's a concerted effort from regulators?
Yes, in cryptocurrencies, the added feature is that it is cross-border. It is because the technology has enabled it throughout the world. People can deal in that. So naturally, different jurisdiction will have to come together and have a coordinated approach. And I'm aware that international standard-setting bodies of the central banks like the BIS, that Basel Committee, and IOSCO, all of them have and the FSB, Financial Services Board. So all of them do have a concern, and they have started the debate whether virtual currencies should be regulated, and in which way, what kind of coordinated activities or positions should be borne in mind. So that work is still on. It is work in process. So primarily because this is an activity which is crossing borders. So the inter-regulatory, inter-jurisdictional coordination, cooperation should be there.
Right, Mr. Gandhi, really appreciate you joining us on Bloomberg. Quinn, this is the last Primetime episode of 2017. It's become a lot more special with your insights. And of course, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Primetime Debate. Many thanks for watching, and wish you a very happy new year from Bloomberg, Quinn.